Yes. It is in the trenches on a beautiful Monday afternoon now. Good afternoon, everyone. In the trenches with you, Jeffrey Dubroff, Garrett Schwartz. I'm a little exhausted coming off a long weekend. I was in San Luis Obispo calling CCL baseball between the Blues and the Barons. My Barons took 2 out of 3. It was cool. I've never been to SLO.
I'll tell you, I do not know where that is, and I do not know who either of those teams are, other than the Barons through you.
SLO is a beautiful town. It's home of Cal Poly. I've never been. Really good sandwiches. Everyone was very nice. It was kind of creepy how nice everyone was.
Geographically, where are we talking?
Central California, like 3.5 hours north of here.
So the middle of absolute nowhere.
Yeah, it's kind of like hidden in. It's like a hiding spot is what this guy described it as, my Uber driver, when I was going to get a burrito in the morning. Everyone was really nice, too nice. But that was my weekend. Garrett, how was yours?
My weekend was pretty fantastic, actually. I had a friend visiting from out of town. Probably had a little bit too much fun this morning, a little bit.
Tends to happen.
Harder to wake up than most Mondays.
They think Los Angeles is... my friends who visit, too, think Los Angeles is some version of Westworld, and they just think they can do whatever they want and just there are no consequences.
Yeah, but there most definitely are.
Yeah.
But last night, actually, I went to a concert, one of the best I've ever been to. It was part of a 2-day festival called the Classic West. So I didn't go the first day. The first day, there was the Eagles, the Doobie Brothers, and Dan Steely performing. 3 big names. But day 2, listen to this, Jeffrey. Opening act, Earth, Wind, and Fire. September, Boogie Wonderland.
My parents actually sat next to Maurice White at a bar one time. I can't remember where they were.
Very cool.
And they just met him out of nowhere.
Act 2, Journey. Even though they got, their second singer since the band's formed, absolutely unreal. Energy was popping. And then the final act, Fleetwood Mac.
Ooh.
And as much fun as I was having at this concert, again, at Dodger Stadium, atmosphere incredible, a wave of nostalgia hit me. Because I realized, wow, this might be the last time I see these 3 bands perform. I mean, Stevie Nicks, lead singer of Fleetwood Mac, is 69 years old right now. Earth, Wind, and Fire, they only got 3 original members of the 10 currently in the band. And it just got me thinking, 10 years from now, what bands do we have to look forward to performing? I mean, who's the rock band of our generation? Green Day? What was their last big hit? American Idiot, 10 years ago when, we were in 4th grade? Great song, but the music industry now is just not what it was in the past.
No, it's not.
Fleetwood Mac, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Journey, timeless legends, decade after decade after decade, still performing. Again, Stevie Nicks is 69 years old.
Rumors is maybe the greatest album in music history.
Potentially. And now the music industry, we don't have timeless legends anymore. All we have are one-hit wonders and these kind of fat artists who maybe they have 1 or 2 good albums. It's Bruno Mars. His new album's awesome. What's the new hot song?
That's
24K.
Like.
That one's awesome. But 10 years from now, are you going to be listening to those songs? No. The Weeknd. Where's Kanye West going to be in 10 years? He's already mentally unstable. So my takeaway was, again, while I'm watching these timeless legends, these timeless rock legends in Dodger Stadium, I kind of had a light bulb go off, and I realized, the baseball makeup of the MLB is kind of similar to the music industry because these organizations are making the same mistake that the music industry is making. These baseball organizations are failing to realize that superstars are not timeless, are no longer timeless. Yet, time and time again over the last few years, baseball teams like the Yankees, the Red Sox, even the Florida Marlins are throwing gargantuan sums of money at all-stars who can't maintain their production after they sign their contracts. We're talking about gargantuan sums of money over decades-long periods of time. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts on the state of baseball and the current payroll, salary, boatloads of money that are being thrown at these all-stars who aren't performing anymore?
Baseball is interesting to me because we were talking about it this morning, and we were looking at these contracts together, and I completely agree with you. And it's so weird because the reason baseball is like this because they can afford to be like this because they have the best players union out of the 4 major U.S. sports, being the NBA, the NFL, the MLB, and the NHL. They haven't had a lockout in recent memory since I've ever been alive.
Soft salary cap.
I mean, it's very, very well done. But looking at these contracts, looking at the top 15, we'll name top 15 largest MLB contracts in history. We'll name about 5, 6, the most outlandish ones.
Let's just do the top 10.
So we'll start with Giancarlo Stanton. He's going to get paid $325 million started in 2015. Contract ends in 2027.
2020, that's 10 years from now.
That's unbelievable. And I read a rumor the other day on Bleacher Report. Is it time to move Giancarlo Stanton? And here's the thing: what team? Again, the only reason that baseball is able, and the only thing that makes it somewhat acceptable, because if this were the NBA, and all of a sudden you're paying, let's take for example that James Harden contract, where he's going to make $228 million over that 4-year extension. That is absurd. The NBA, no team is going to want to take on that money. That's why no team, say James Harden for some reason just blows up and he just implodes and he's no longer the player he is and they try to trade him. No one's going to want to take on that contract. Baseball, like we said, the soft salary cap, you can. Anyway, moving on, Alex Rodriguez from 2008 to 2017 was scheduled to make $275 million. He didn't even finish out that contract.
He's still getting paid. He's reporting from the booth for Fox Sports right now, and he's still getting paid about $25 million a year.
Unreal. Miguel Cabrera, scheduled from...
Did not make the All-Star game this year.
Scheduled from 2016 to 2013, $248 million. Albert the Machine Pujols, $240 million over 10 years. Robinson Cano, the same contract, $240 over 10 years, although his
home run totals are about half of what they were in Yankee Stadium.
All-Star Game MVP. The biggest one to me I'm seeing right now, and you pointed this one out to me, and I didn't even realize it. Joey Votto, $225 million over 10 years. Made one All-Star game in the last 4 years.
In the last 4 years since signing his contract.
And the Reds are a dumpster fire. Talk about a team that imploded quickly.
The last two that stand out in this top 10. Again, top 10 largest contracts in MLB history. We have David Price, who, other than the fact that he shut out the Yankees this weekend, has just seen his ERA absolutely balloon since signing with the Red Sox, right? And here's my favorite, number 10, Prince Fielder. Prince Fielder is signed through 2020. He signed a contract for approximately 8 years, $214 million. Jeffrey, what team is Prince Fielder currently playing for?
He's not.
He's not.
That's the best part.
So there's only, if we look at these top 10 contracts, I left out number 9. Number 9 is Clayton Kershaw. He signed a 6-year, $215 million deal. He's probably the exception.
He's worth every single penny.
However, what's his arm going to look like in 1, 2, 3 years from now? You never know with a starting pitcher.
And that's the point I wanted to get to in a little bit. But go ahead.
No, but so if you were looking at these, again, the 10 biggest contracts in baseball, Stanton, A-Rod twice, Miggy Cabrera, Albert Pujols, Cano, Votto, Price, Kershaw, and Fielder, how many of those 10 are justifiable?
Of the 10 we just named?
Yeah. I'd say, we said Kershaw and maybe A-Rod because the Yankees won a World Series with them.
I'd go with maybe Robinson Cano.
Sure.
Cano's still an All-Star. He was an All-Star Game MVP this year. He does very well. He's a great fielder for the Mariners. Although the Mariners, that's a team that's just throwing money out the wayside for no reason. Although King Felix is another guy. He's on this list, but he's down at number 16 or 18. He's going to make $175 million from 2013 to 2019. But that's 2 Cy Youngs in that contract already.
And MLB teams need to realize the same thing as music producers. We are in an era of crisis. We no longer have timeless superstars. Their production wanes off after their first big album, after their first big contract. Why are we throwing boatloads of money at these stars who can't keep up their production? Now, here's something that's really interesting. I love this. Is it a coincidence that these MLB stars with gargantuan contracts, their production becomes laughable the year after signing their deals? Ready? I'm going to give you a few examples. Albert Pujols. In 2011 with the Cardinals, he batted .299 with 99 RBIs, 37 home runs. The next year, not as bad, .285, 30 home runs.
His first year with the Angels.
First year with the Angels. The next year, he's batted .258 with 64 RBIs and 17 home runs. Basically seeing his batting average drop 50 points, his home run total more than cut in half. Here's another great one. Josh Hamilton. Still getting paid, by the way. What team is he on right now, Josh Hamilton? All right, $125 million deal with the Los Angeles Angels. In 2012 with the Texas Rangers, he bats .285 with 43 home runs and 128 RBIs.
Do you remember that, by the way? That was unbelievable.
He was unbelievable. It was the whole talk of the free agent, right? It was Pujols and Hamilton that year. Same year. Or actually, no, I lied. Hamilton was the next year. 2013, his batting average drops from .285 to .250. He goes from 43 homers to 21 and 128 RBIs to 79. Pathetic. David Price, 2015, a 2.45 ERA with 5 losses. Last year, his first year with the Red Sox, after signing his mega deal, the largest of any pitcher in MLB history, his ERA jumps almost 2 points to 3.99, and his loss total doubles 9. Why are we giving big money out in the sport of baseball?
I think it goes back to the idea is that you can. And I was saying this to you this morning is, imagine the outrage and the backlash from the local fan base if, say, this year Bryce Harper wants $400 million over 15 years. Is he worth that money? I'd say at this point maybe not that much, but he's worth a contract at least $300 million deep.
So Bryce Harper's only 24 right now, which is why it's so fascinating, because you bring up a really good point. Is he worth $400 million? And you look at Stanton and you're like, man, he's only in year 2, year 3 of his contract. He's on the book for 10 more years.
And here's the thing, though, and I was going to say this. The reason they pay this money is because you can, but imagine the idea of, and I use this example, Rick Porcello, the 2016 AL Cy Young winner, which was a steal. It should have been Verlander, who's also not having a great year. He might be on the trading block. He is on the trading block. Rick Porcello wants to stay in Boston, and he'll take a $21 million a year contract over 10 years. And then all of a sudden, the big spending Miami Marlins, maybe the worst franchise in all of sports.
Oh, my man Jeffrey Loria.
Comes in and says, we'll give you $30 million over 8 years.
And the best thing with
team
these teams
needs to match it, though.
And they don't even finish off on these teams.
The thing is, the Red Sox need to find a way to match that, because imagine losing. You can't just let the former Cy Young winner walk away. And I think the problem is the MLB just has too much money. That is too much money to have. And it's good for them, and it's a credit to their players' union, but they have too much money that they can have on the books at a time.
So you make the argument that you have. So let me clarify. You basically say they have so much money that they just have to spend it.
Yes, or they're going to lose their players, and another part is it's just when it comes to these players not finishing their contracts, or the players leaving, or the players getting injured and retiring. Baseball is such a fragile sport. It's unlike anything other. It's so different, and you could argue that obviously the NFL is just as fragile with the way they're getting hit and the physicality of the game, but Clayton Kershaw could pitch tomorrow night and throw out his arm, and he's done forever.
I totally agree.
And it's wild.
So you say, again, with baseball teams having so much amount of money, and again, a soft cap, that these teams, there's no excuse to not spend. Like, if you're the Red Sox, you got to go out and get the biggest pitcher on the board if that's going to put you over the edge.
If you're not going to be willing to spend, you're not going to win games.
But here's what's so fascinating to me. I'm a Yankee fan. You know that, right?
Yes.
I grew up watching the big, old, all-star, star-studded Yankee team, right? They won pretty much one World Series in my generation when they got A-Rod and CC and Burnett. And again, those contracts are still coming out to hurt them. Alex Rodriguez still on the books. CC Sabathia, he's having a great season, but after 4 years of injury-prone seasons and a cocaine addiction, he's finally figured himself out in the last year of his contract. But if I'm looking at the Yankees this year, who are having a pretty good season, way ahead of expectations. They're only 3.5 games behind the Red Sox for the top of the AL East. Let's talk about who the stars have been for the Yankees so far. It's Gary Sanchez behind home plate. It's Aaron Judge, the MVP leader so far. It's Jordan Montgomery and Luis Severino, the two best pitchers in our rotation. Let me tell you who's not having a good season for the Yankees. Masahiro Tanaka, who's become a liability for the Yankees at this point. Jacoby Ellsbury, who, shocker, has not been able to stay on the field this season. It's become Aroldis Chapman, who, by the way, is the biggest con artist in the history of the sports. Let me just talk about this guy for a second. A year ago, he was suspended for beating the living daylight out of his girlfriend. He then signed with the Yankees, got traded to the Cubs, won a World Series, re-signed with the Yankees for 5 years, $86 million. And news alert, he sucks this year. He's getting paid about $300,000 for every inning he pitches for the Yankees. By the way, the Yankees lead the league in blown saves.
That also is a highlight, once again, to Theo Epstein. He got what he wanted and what he needed, and then he just bailed, and he just got rid of him.
And Chase Headley's the last name I'm going to throw out there. Now, what stands out about Tanaka, Ellsbury, Chapman, and Headley, they're the four of the 5 highest paid teammates on the Yankees payroll, other than Alex Rodriguez, of course, who's still making money, even though he's not playing. And when you look at Gary Sanchez and Aaron Judge, they're making barely $1 million combined. So again, my argument is, yeah, you can spend money on these big names, but I don't even think it's worth it. I don't even want them on the team.
So it's so funny. And I'm looking at the Dodgers payroll right now, and it almost is seemingly the same way. So the highest paid player on the Dodgers in terms of adjusted salary is Clayton Kershaw, who's making $35.5 million. That's 33 with the signing bonus. The next highest on the active payroll, on the active roster, Justin Turner, $13 million, All-Star. Rich Hill's after that, a decent pitcher. After that, Brandon McCarthy, 11.5.
Right now,
and then there's a drop-off from there. Puig makes $8 million. Jock Peterson, $555,000.
It exactly proves our
Cody
point.
Bellinger, $476,000.
By the way, half the All-Stars in baseball right now are still on the rookie deals.
They're all young prospects, but also, again, it's different than any other sport because these players develop. The MLB has the most intricate farm league system where these players develop and they mature over time and they're making no money, and then they get to the big leagues and they're considered a rookie. What's so funny is look at the 2017 retained salaries of the Dodgers. They're still paying Carl Crawford, Matt Kemp, Hector Oliveira.
So what's the takeaway? Big money not worth it in baseball.
Big money not worth it in baseball, but at the same time, when Cody Bellinger rolls around and he's up for that big contract, you know that the Dodgers are going to pay him.
It's like you said, you have so much money that you have to, but it almost never pays off. So let me ask you, big money doesn't work in baseball. What other sports does it work? So you and I both agree the NBA makes sense, only because if you got 5 guys on the court at one time, and one of them's a superstar, he's going to make a 20%. He's going to
make your team.
He's 20% of the team.
If LeBron James were to go and play for the LA Lakers, they're 15 games better.
If he plays for Brooklyn, I think they're an NBA Finals team.
No, but
it's worth debating. What about football? Where do you spend your money in football?
Outside of the quarterback position,
of course,
the middle linebacker.
That's a good one.
I would say the quarterback of the defense is so important. He needs to read plays. He needs to understand schemes. He's the quarterback of the defense.
So I'd agree with you. I just don't think the shelf life is there for middle linebackers. I don't have the research on this. I'd say I like throwing money at pass rushers. I just think.
So we're agreeing similar. You're going in a more broader stance.
And then the other one, I would say offensive linemen.
Yeah, look at what Jerry Jones has done.
Let's transition though, because Jeffrey, I think there was some big news that came in today. Some big news regarding the the multi-billion-dollar project on USC's campus.
I couldn't focus when I found this out. This is unbelievable.
So let's hear it.
So there's an article that came out on LAist.com that they finally announced, it's been a mystery for so long, of what they're putting in the USC Village, and they finally came out with a running list. It's not complete.
By the way, let's just tell our listeners really quick what the USC Village is.
So the USC Village is a $70 million project.
By the way, I
think it's more than that.
It's not $70 million. It's about $2.1 billion.
I thought it was $70 million.
It's a lot of money, regardless.
But
so what? Is it going to be housing there? There's
housing. There's a Target. There's a Trader Joe's. There's
restaurants, shopping.
Basically, what it is it's keeping USC students. It's basically not. It's basically keeping USC.
Why you should come to USC.
And it's also finally giving USC students a place where they can just be with other USC students. That's not the academic part of campus. You know what I mean?
President Nikias is showing he's got big balls.
I mean, this is unbelievable.
So let's hear what they got.
So I'm pulling it up. I'm pulling it up.
Breaking news on In the Trenches.
This is huge. I saw this on Facebook. So this one article, it's a $700 million, I forgot 10. $700 million USC Village project. It's definitely more. But here is what they have. As for retail tenants, there's a Trader Joe's, a Target, a Trejo's Cantina, Danny Trejo, Machete, is having a restaurant.
I assume they'll sell margaritas there.
Oh, I would hope so. Rance's Chicago Pizza. That's a top notch. I looked on Google, 4.5 stars.
What was the burger joint you were telling me about?
Wahlburgers.
Wow.
Mark Wahlberg and Donnie's restaurant chain, the Boston Burger Company.
How much would you pay for a Mark Wahlberg cheeseburger?
If Mark Wahlberg's serving it to me,
$100.
I'd pay like something up there as long as he makes some like movie comment. We could think like the Thunder Buddy song from Ted. Cafe Dulce, I don't know. There's the butcher, the baker, and the cappuccino maker. I don't know what that's going to be. Yeah. There's Greenleaf Gourmet Chop Shop. That's where I'm going to be getting my salads.
I heard rumors about a pub.
There's a Rockin' Riley's, an Irish pub.
Now, what better marketing for USC than to stick an Irish pub right next to their residential student housing? Like, if I'm an incoming freshman, I'm like, man, I'm going to this school.
Well, also at the same time, you brought it up. This village has to be top notch. They're going to be tough on IDs. I know will still be a thing.
So we got a margarita joint.
Talk about a place you can go on a
Irish
Sunday.
Pub, a Trader Joe's.
Wow. Talk about a place on a Sunday. I don't have to go to, what's it called, Tom's Urban all the way in LA Live to watch some football. I can literally walk 5 minutes to Rockin' Riley, sit down, and drink a Guinness, because they better have Guinness on tap, because it's Irish pub.
Speaking of Irish pubs, there's going to be a big fight playing at that Irish pub in about 6 weeks, featuring an Irish MMA fighter and a boxer in Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather. Now, the two fighters just finished off their 4-day press tour. Started in Los Angeles, went to Toronto, then New York. Finished off in London, and it was just a total spectacle. Clearly, these two guys are marketing machines. Conor McGregor was especially entertaining, doing his singing, his dancing, his jabs at Mayweather, being a little boy with his backpack. So, Jeffrey, I know we're still 6 weeks out, but I am going to ask you, what are your thoughts on the fight? Are you hyped up about it? By the way, $99 on pay-per-view. Are you buying it?
No.
Why?
So I've bought in 2 fights to watch in my lifetime.
Let me guess. Mayweather-Pacquiao and Mayweather-Canelo?
No. Mayweather-Pacquiao.
Yes.
And McGregor-Jose Aldo. My dad and I sat and watched about 2.5 hours of preliminary fights, and I'm sitting there. It's like 11 o'clock. I'm sitting there. I'm like, when is this fight going to come on? Finally comes on.
It's on the West Coast,
too. The notorious MMA. He comes out and knocks Jose Aldo out in 13 seconds. And my dad looks at me and just goes, "You owe me $110. Good night." And then I watched the Mayweather fight. It went the distance. So no one was hit. Mayweather won.
I'm buying the fight, and I'll tell you why.
Look, I'll probably end up watching it. I'm not going to buy it myself.
Either way, you're witnessing history. You're either witnessing Floyd Mayweather, arguably the greatest boxer of all time, right? Finished 50-0. Great. Or you're watching Conor McGregor, an MMA fighter, beat arguably the greatest boxer of all time.
If he goes in there and wins, he's ruining the sport of boxing.
As a sports fan, you have to watch. So I'm spending the $99.
I won't spend it, but I'll watch it somewhere.
Let's just have quick prediction. Like, do you think it's going to be a fight? Like, I mean, Mayweather-Pacquiao, everyone agrees was just a bore fest, a yawn fest. Like,
yeah,
not entertaining. What can we expect from Mayweather-McGregor?
I think the tour they just went on is going to be more entertaining than the fight. Although, I'll say this, who both... I think obviously a lot of what they're talking to each other is an act, but I bet after they were done and McGregor said, "When I beat you the first time, we'll have our rematch in the octagon," which may be a setup round 2, which is going to be another...
We don't know what Mayweather's taxes problems look like. But if they're as serious as like people are letting on...
Again. He'll fight until he's 60.
Of course.
I've heard rumors that he only has his money in a checking account.
But you think it goes the distance?
I think it goes the distance. I'm not sure who wins. McGregor's 40. I mean, he is old, relatively speaking.
So you're not sure who wins?
I'm really unsure.
I'm going to disagree. So I think one of two things is going to happen. The first being it's going to go the distance, and McGregor's not going to touch Mayweather the whole fight. And I'll tell you why I said that. I met Daniel Cormier a few weeks ago. He's actually fighting John Jones for a UFC. I forget what level it is, but one of the UFC title matches. And he's good friends with Oscar De La Hoya. And he was telling me when De La Hoya fought Mayweather. Again, De La Hoya, another name, is one of the greatest boxers of all time. When he fought Mayweather, he could not land a punch on Mayweather. If Oscar De La Hoya one of the best
I
boxers
actually
ever.
watched that with my grandparents. I didn't buy it.
Cannot land a punch on Mayweather. How is Conor McGregor going to do that? So that's one. But, I actually think, so you say the media events between Mayweather and McGregor is going to be more entertaining than the fight. I'm going to go an extra mile and say I think there will be more rounds of media events, there were 4, than rounds of boxing between the two.
So someone's getting knocked out.
I don't think McGregor has the patience to last with Mayweather. Right? He's going to go for the knockout. And again, even though Floyd Mayweather is 40 years old, I think he could still land a punch on an impatient McGregor and knock him out early. But we will see. We're going to take a quick break. Again, by the way, we have not talked about NBA so far.
Thank gosh.
For a nice change of pace, some baseball, some MMA, some UFC Village. We'll be back in just a little bit. Again, this is In the Trenches. I'm Garrett Schwartz. With me is Jeffrey Dubrov. As always, you're listening to KXSC Los Angeles, online at kxsc.org. We're on the airwaves at 1560 a.m. We'll be back in just a few. And we are back. This is In the Trenches again. I'm Garrett Schwartz. With me is Jeffrey Dubrov. Been a fun show so far. Talk some baseball. Why the music industry is doomed forever, because we will no longer have Fleetwood Mac and Journey, and instead we will have Bruno Mars in the weekend. But now we're going to talk a little bit of NBA, even though we just went off the air celebrating the fact that we haven't talked about it yet. And we're going to talk a little bit about NBA Summer League. And I personally have not watched a lot of it. I know, Jeffrey, you've watched more than me. But I'll tell you why I haven't watched pretty much any of it. I've watched one Lonzo game so far, but the reason is that I don't think it means anything. And, I'm working for Colin Cowherd this summer, and Colin just is gushing over Lonzo Ball and what he's seen this past week. And pretty much every NBA writer is. But for me, I don't make much of it. What are your thoughts?
I think it has been awesome to watch. You should check it out. He's going to be in the Summer League final. He's single-handedly taken that team to the Summer League final. And I understand there's going to be a drop-off when he enters the league. Understandably so for any rookie in this draft class. The 3 takeaways that I have seen from this NBA draft class is, 1, the draft as a whole, this is picks 1 through 60, are much better than any draft class we've seen in a long time. I mean, Jordan Bell is putting up Draymond Green-like numbers, and he was drafted in the 2nd round. The second takeaway I'm seeing, Lonzo Ball has and it's been, this is not a hot takeaway, but it's finally seeing it in a more, while these guys are not as good as the players he's going to be playing against, but they're in the NBA Summer League, so they're better than some of the players that he played in college. That guy has unteachable basketball skills.
Lonzo's good. He's put up a triple-double twice.
And finally, my top 5 players that I mentioned a while ago, Dennis Smith Jr., De'Aaron Fox, Jason Tatum, Lonzo Ball. I don't think Tatum was in there, actually, so I won't take credit for that. And Markelle Fultz are light years ahead of every player in the draft that was drafted, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think we knew that. And we knew that.
They are. Dennis Smith Jr. is unbelievable. That guy has the potential to be great. But Lonzo Ball is averaging 16 points a game, 8 rebounds, 9.5 assists. I know
who's he playing against?
I understand that. The guy has been phenomenal. He's making it fun to watch. People are focused on the fact that he's worn 4 different brands of shoes over the next few days.
I will give you this. He's been a sensation so far. People are talking about the Summer League like they haven't been in a while. They're selling out the stands in Vegas. But look, to me, what this shows about Lonzo Ball is exactly what we knew from his playing at UCLA, which is against 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds and C-league talent, C-level talent. He's gonna be sensational. But at the end of the day, the questions surrounding Lonzo Ball are still not even being close to being answered. How is he physical enough? Can he defend? Is his shot going to be the same when he's got 7-foot athletic wingmen guarding him, right?
I understand his game's going to drop off. I still think there's a huge idea, and not a huge idea. There is a clear indication that he is making the guys around him so much better than they actually are. I mean, this guy Caruso is going out there and scoring 15 games off of Alonzo's assists.
That point you bring up is exactly why, I said it a few weeks ago, why I hate the D'Angelo Russell trade for the Lakers. Like, how much fun would it have been to see Lonzo play next to D'Angelo Russell? We won't get to see it, but it would have been fun.
I mean, the Lonzo Ball question is still not answered completely because he will obviously, like I said, there's going to be a drop-off in the way he plays when he enters the league and he's being guarded by whoever it's going to be, Kawhi Leonard. Maybe Kawhi Leonard plays him for a game. I mean,
yeah, of course. I mean, of course, if the defensive player of the year is playing,
that's what I'm saying. But when he's playing up against guys, I'll use a better example. When he's playing against a CJ McCollum or a player who's battle-tested, has been in the league for a long time, and is an all-star,
we just don't know yet.
It's going to be different. But nonetheless, he's exceeded my expectations for what he was going to do.
So speaking of expectations, once the season starts, is Lonzo Ball playing under a new shoe deal?
So I think, by the way, I said this morning, and you didn't really bite on it that much. I think it's such a genius move what they're doing. I don't know if our listeners haven't been noticing. The first game of the Summer League season, Lonzo Ball wore his signature Big Baller brand shoes.
BBB.
After that, he wore a pair of Nikes. The next game, he wore a pair of James Harden Adidas. The game after that, he wore Jordans. And the game after that, he wore a pair of customized sent from Steph Curry Under Armour Currys. I think it is unbelievable what he is doing. I'm convinced that he and his dad made a shoe just to make some money, knowing full well that he wasn't going to wear the shoe, and now they're about to get an obnoxious shoe deal.
It's just tough to tell because I think LeVar is too invested in his other sons, and that's why he's so attached to this Big Baller brand. But it's a good theory. I mean, look, if Nike throws $100 million Lonzo Ball's way, he's not saying no. I mean, that's
of course not.
So, yeah.
The guy's proving that he might be worth it.
So let's move on, but we're going to stick with basketball because we're going to talk about this guy named Marvin Bagley. Now, I'm not sure if you guys know who he is, but Marvin Bagley is currently... I mean, he's technically a high school junior, going to be a high school senior. He's going into his senior year of high school. He plays at Sierra Valley High School in Arizona, and he's being talked about as the next big thing.
Kevin Durant.
The next, big
They're saying
college
he's Kevin Durant.
NBA superstar. Now, the caveat is you're saying, why are we talking about Marvin Bagley now if, again, he's only going to be a high school senior? Well, the word on the street is he's thinking of reclassifying to play in this upcoming college basketball season, which is, by the way, what Andrew Wiggins did just a few years ago. The two teams, or there's really three teams, but the three teams he's looking at.
Says two, but
right,
yeah.
So it's Duke, Arizona, and USC, but most reports say, quote unquote, there's a feeling of a Duke versus USC showdown. What on earth does it mean if the University of Southern California basketball program signs the consensus #1
on every single recruiting website?
What does that mean?
On 247, he is a .99999. One, it's unbelievable by Andy Enfield. You and I were looking at the numbers. His first year that he came here, they were 11-21. They finished last in the Pac-12.
Our freshman year. Last in the Pac-12.
I mean, it is unbelievable if he can land this guy. And everything I'm reading says that whoever does between Duke and USC, between those two teams, will be the national champion favorite. This is a USC team that is returning every single starter and 3 bench players and adding Charles O'Bannon Jr., who is a 5-star, and
Derek
Thornton, a Duke transfer.
5-star.
5-star. And they also have the #1 recruiting class in the country at the moment.
Unbelievable.
It is absolutely outrageous that the USC basketball team might have higher expectations than the USC football
not yet.
team.
If they land this guy, it's going to be right there. And you know, by the way, I'm gonna diss myself for a little bit. 2 years ago, when I used to do a show with Cooper Perkins, we talked about the fact, what do we think of Andy Enfield? Is he the big deal for USC, or is he kind of like a stepping stone to
I never thought
the next
he was.
big name? And no, nobody thought he was. But by the way, whether or not we get this Bagley guy, look at the progression since he's got here. So, like you said, 11-21 his first year, our senior year in high school. Then when we get to the school, 12-20, 12-12 in the Pac-12. Sophomore year, we're 21-13.
Projected to finish last in the Pac-12 that year.
And we
if you
were
remember
an
that
AP
correctly.
top 25 team, and we didn't get our first conference win until this past year. Sorry, not conference win. Our first tournament win until this past year.
Against
Again,
Providence.
making the round of 32 after beating Providence and SMU.
And we should have won. We should have won that game against Baylor. I mean,
It was a tough
we had
one.
some costly mistakes at the end of the game.
I think, look,
if you remember well.
if the team can stay healthy this year and Benny Boatwright has the opportunity to play with his teammates for a full season,
And there's Marvin
We're-
Bagley coming off.
I mean, it's just going to be interesting to see how this team gels. Because for the first time, by the way, what was so special about last year's USC team is just a roster of unselfish players, right? McLaughlin, you could argue, is your biggest talent, but he's a pass-first guard, right? This year, now that you're adding O'Bannon Jr. and Derek Thornton, again, a five-star transfer, and you could be adding Marvin Bagley, you know, do you have too much ego on the team? Is it the same team that we saw last year? And talent, again, the talent's going to be there to be really good, but is the style of play going to be the same? And I don't have the answer to that.
Neither do I. We'll see. But
Really quick, one more topic before we take a break and bring on our guest. I know, Jeffrey, it's a friend of yours
friend of
from
mine who
home.
called when we didn't have a guest today, and he called me when I was walking over to the studio.
So Jimbo Fisher, coach of Florida State, went out and said that he believes the ACC has proven itself as the best conference in college football. Now, for a while, it hasn't even been a conversation. It's been the SEC, right? Alabama, the dynasty of the last decade, they have their fair share of powerhouse teams. Auburn, Florida, LSU, yada, yada, yada. So the question I pose to you, Jeffrey, is you siding with Jimbo on this one? I mean, let's look at the ACC. They got 5 teams in the top 25. Clemson, the national champ winners. Florida State, Louisville, who has Heisman winner Lamar Jackson under helm. Virginia Tech and Miami.
I mean, look at the rest of that conference.
That's
though.
a strong conference. So
Boston
who do you take?
College, Georgia Tech's not great. Virginia, Wake Forest,
So you're
Syracuse.
not buying it.
Pittsburgh's a decent team. North Carolina's decent. NC State. I mean, sure, if you want to say they're deep with mediocre talent, that's fine.
So who's the best conference, best Power 5 conference in college football right now?
I think it has to be a tie between the Big Ten and the Pac-12.
You're going to put the Pac-12 up there?
I really am, and I didn't think so before, and I'll let you go and explain your reasoning because I think that's your pick. My pick with the Big Ten is I think they're the deepest with the best coaches, and I know there's players there's teams in that conference like Rutgers who are absolutely abysmal, but you're looking at 4 teams in the top 10 at the end of the season, coached by Urban Meyer, James Franklin, Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, they're deep, but come on, they're not. If you want to talk deep, look at the Pac-12. All right, look, so the top programs, obviously, and you want to talk coaching, right? It's Washington, Chris Peterson, Colorado, Mike McIntyre, Utah, Kyle Whittingham, Stanford, David Shaw, maybe Clay Helton at USC, right? We too early to tell. But if you look at the bottom programs, because again, you were like, yeah, you got some Rutgers. Let's look at the Pac-12. The teams that weren't top 25 last year, you got Washington State with Mike Leach.
That's a bowl team.
UCLA with Jim Mora. He's a former NFL coach. You got Arizona, who's probably one of the bottom 3 teams in the conference, and Rich Rodriguez is heading their program. The Pac-12 is deep, but I wouldn't pick the Pac-12 as the best conference. I would have to still go with the SEC.
The thing about the SEC for so long is they've been so dominated by the West Division. And the fact that you'd see Alabama playing Missouri. Just because Alabama is representing that conference. But look.
But that's the thing.
You have Alabama, Arkansas, and all. Just because you have one good team in a conference doesn't make it the best conference in the sport.
I also love Ed Orgeron. I think LSU is going to be pretty special this year.
I don't think so. They've never been able to have a quarterback. Ever. They've never
by
had a quarterback.
Regardless, I would. So if you don't agree with me with the SEC, I'd also put the Big Ten above the Pac-12.
Vanderbilt's not great. They made a bowl game, though. Ole Miss is falling. Missouri's never been great.
Okay, so what about the Big Ten? Again,
Kentucky.
I think you agree. Big Ten, you got Jim Harbaugh, Urban Meyer, 4 teams in the top 10.
I mean, let's
with
talk about this,
Wisconsin,
though.
Penn
But
State.
look at the SEC East for just a sec. I mean, the SEC East, when you look at it, their best team is sitting at about a 9-4 record. And that a 10-3 record, and that's Florida. And that's a good record, but the rest of the teams are sitting at 7-5, 6-6, 6-6, 6-6, 6-6.
All right, look, at the end of the day, until we see a Pac-12 team win a national title, they're not in the conversation. It's just that simple.
That's fine by me.
It's that simple. But it looks like we're going to go to break.
That is right. We're going to take a break. 12:38 Pacific time. You're listening to In the Trenches on KXSC. You can tune in on KXSC.org or 1560 AM. Robert Durbin, longtime friend of mine, college football nut, former sports writer, is going to come on. We're going to talk college football In about 2 minutes, I'll ask him some questions about Texas football, USC football, and we'll continue more on the conversation we just had. Don't go anywhere. We're about to roast this guy. And we are back. I have a good friend of mine, lifelong friend, Robert Durbin. He goes to the University of Texas at Austin, diehard college football fan, former sports writer back in the day, decided to take the big leap to business. Robert, how are you?
I'm good, Jeffrey. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Garrett's sitting with me here. Garrett's interested to hear your takes. And we're going to jump right off the bat. Garrett and I were talking previously. We were talking about college football just because, I mean, it's at that point now. We're less than 7 Saturdays away now. And we were talking about the best conferences in college football. Really quickly, I'm going to ask you right off the bat, who do you think is the best conference in college football after Jimbo Fisher came out in his ACC Media Day saying that the ACC was the best conference in college football?
You know, I think I'm going to have to agree with Jimbo on that one. I really think that the ACC this year, particularly with Clemson and Florida State, I think those are probably two of the best teams in the country. And, you know, top to bottom, I think they have some pretty, even going down to Duke, they're a good team every single year. Recently with the program they've got going there, I just think that consistently they probably could beat everyone.
So a little surprising. I know you're a student at Texas. Is that correct? UT.
Yeah,
we got a big game coming up week 2 or sorry, week 2 of our season. Week 3 of your season.
Week 3 of our season.
No, we gotta buy the first week.
No, we don't. It's Western Michigan, Stanford.
Okay, I'm wrong. Whatever. Anyway, you're a Texas guy. I thought you might have potentially, would have put the Big 12 in that conversation. What are your thoughts? What do you think of the Big 12 this year?
Well, as this upcoming year, I think the Big 12, we need a good year as a conference as a whole. I mean, obviously losing Bob Stoops is a really big blow to the conference. It's a guy that's pretty much dominated the Big 12 since its inception, and that's coming from a Texas fan. And, right now there's a lot of question marks as to if the conference can survive as a whole. I mean, you got Oklahoma, I guess, as the projected favorite, but, Lincoln Riley, a first-time head coach coming into a situation like that, there's a lot of question marks. You got Oklahoma State with Mason Rudolph. They should be good, but, it's just you get into bowl games in Texas. I mean, the Big 12 just it doesn't add up against some of the perennial powers, and we've only had one Big 12 team since the inception of the college football playoff. And, Oklahoma just got run out of the stadium by Clemson, so there's a lot of question marks.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I have Oklahoma State as one of those teams as my dark horse. I'm a big fan of Mason Rudolph. I think Jeff Gundy is one of the best coaches in college football. That mullet's hilarious. What happens, though? The state of the Big 12 is in a fragile place. What happens if the Big 12 is not what it needs to be this year and they do not put a team into the playoff? Do you see a future of it maybe potentially just breaking apart?
Yeah, I very well could see that because I think that, Texas, obviously I'm coming from a biased opinion, but I think we could be independent and function perfectly fine. I mean, you could get A&M back on the schedule. You could play USC, Notre Dame, all the perennial powers every single year. And if we would be fine on our own. But, there's some other schools like TCU who consistently put out good programs, but you don't really know what their landing spot might be in the event of a breakup. I mean, the Big 12 really, they need someone to really make a run at it this year. And quite frankly, I don't know if we have a team to do it.
What you're saying really isn't that surprising when I asked you, where you think the Big 12 stands. Funny enough, it shows, in our conversation earlier, Jeffrey and I were saying, who's the best Power 5 conference in college football right now. And Jeffrey said the Big 10. I said the SEC only because, I just think Alabama still is the team to beat in college football, and they're just far and away better than anyone else. And you said, agreeing with Jimbo Fisher, the ACC, and again, in our conversation too, we said the Pac-12 could be the deepest conference in college football. So the Big 12 just kind of trailing off behind the other 4 conferences.
Very much so. We're kind of, this is definitely kind of a find your identity year for the conference to see what we can have. Because Cliff Kingsbury, the golden boy in the eyes of Texas Tech, he's on the hot seat. He hasn't produced. Texas obviously needs to get back into relevance. I mean, we just don't have what necessarily it's been in the past. But I mean, if you look at it, historically throughout the course of the Big 12, it's really, when the Big 12 was good, it was Texas and Oklahoma. And now that Texas for sure hasn't pulled our weight in the last 7 years, the conference is really it's been hurting. And obviously everything that's gone down with Baylor, it's just there's a lot of
It's disgusting what's going on there with Baylor. And we were looking at the Big 12 outside of Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, and I guess you could put TCU in there. I mean, there's Iowa State, there's Kansas State, there's Kansas. I mean, that's a struggling. The fact that it's almost as if you have to feed the poor. I mean, you have to share your money to a program of the likes of Kansas, who only produces a basketball talent.
By the way, speaking of feeding the poor, interesting thing I heard listening to the Peristyle podcast a few weeks ago. The Pac-12 is up for a new contract in about 10 years, and what they were talking about is, the Pac-12 might not be the Pac-12 when they renegotiate, because as it stands now, there's some serious media revenue sharing and TV revenue sharing, and a program like USC is making the same amount of money from the Pac-12 network as a program like Oregon State, and that's just not right. So the question of feeding the poor is an interesting one. Anyway, let's talk.
That's quite frankly, I don't think Texas probably cares about that as much, because we were lucky and ESPN gave us $300 million.
Oh yeah, you got. But that's the thing. You have your own network.
We have our own television network. But for someone very much like Oklahoma or Oklahoma State, I mean, Oklahoma's won the Big 12 championship, I think, 10 times, maybe more. And so if they're getting the same amount of money as a school like Kansas, who won their first conference game in the first, I think it was since 2014 last year. There's a lot of truth to that. Because schools want to provide for their athletes, and that's a good point.
Kansas won their first conference game since 2014 last year.
Yeah, and it happened to be against Texas, but that's a side note.
So, Robert, before we go into my favorite segment of this show, I just want to ask you a question really quick. Tom Herman's coming in. I don't think there's been this much hype around an individual college football coach going to a new team in quite some time, maybe since Urban Meyer going to Ohio State or Jim Harbaugh going to Michigan.
Agreed.
There is so much hype and so much expectation around Tom Herman and this Texas football program this year. Do you expect to fill those this year? And if not, because I don't necessarily think they will, but I think there'll be an improvement. At what point, if at any, will Tom Herman and his Texas football team that he envisions arrive?
Truthfully, as an unbiased fan, I think it's probably the 2018 season. But as a delusional kid who's grown up thinking Texas is going to win every game at kickoff, I think it very well could be this year. It just kind of you guys know college football it's an interesting animal. If you get hot at the right time, just like USC, you can make a run. You can make a run and do a lot of stuff. We're athletically loaded. I mean, across the board, we have some of the best athletes in the country. I'd put them up against anybody. But as far as experience in some areas and the amount of I guess just good, savvy football players we have, it's going to be interesting, because the teams in the past have been severely, especially under Charlie Strong, have been severely undercoached. We really struggled in that area, and it showed up in a lot of our games. But I would be really shocked if Texas didn't drastically improve.
Yeah,
from 2 back-to-back 5 and 7s.
So you're high on Texas. Obviously, I agree with you. I think Tom Herman's a big upgrade on Charlie Strong. Your opinion, what can we expect? USC Texas, the Rose Bowl. Sorry, the BCS title rematch game. Still the Rose Bowl game.
Yeah.
What can you expect in that showdown? You still high on your Longhorns?
Well, look, I'm going to try to come at this from as much of an unbiased.
We appreciate that.
With some facts to back it up. Look, you guys are coming off of your opening season with what? Western Michigan and Stanford?
Yes.
Stanford plays you guys tough every single year. It's going to be a physical game. It's going to be a ground and pound game. Western Michigan obviously made it to the Cotton Bowl last year. They still, PJ Fleck's gone, but they still have a lot of talent. That's not going to be an easy game. I mean, USC's coming off of a season with Juju Smith as a stud receiver, 74th in passing, 66th in rushing, with Ronald Jones. I mean, and not to mention these. Darnold doesn't have a go-to guy this year. I think that USC has the potential to be a great team, but there's also the potential that they might get trapped early with this inexperience that the team has.
And that is a fair point, but I'm going to be unbiased too. I think USC steamrolls over the Longhorns. And look, I don't know much about the difference between this Longhorns team and last year's, other than you guys bringing in Tom Herman.
And
But if you're looking at last year, look, you guys gave up 45 points to Oklahoma, you have 49 points to Oklahoma State, 50 to Cal. I just can't see a scenario where Sam Darnold. I don't care who's around him if he doesn't have a Juju Smith anymore. I just can't see a scenario where Sam Darnold. And by the way, don't forget about Ronald Jones the third. Second, third, whatever. Don't light it up against Texas. It's, in my opinion, this USC offense just has way too much firepower for this Texas defense.
I've been telling Robert and my dad this for a while.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, but the Texas defense, you got to understand, this is probably one of the most athletically gifted teams in the country, especially on the defensive side. We have people like Malik Jefferson, who's probably going to be a first-round draft pick. Our DBs are loaded if they could just ever play better. And if we just get that piece into the puzzle, it's going to be a completely different game. And I realize that that's a big factor and a big variable, and there's a lot of uncertainty with that. But, we have a great staff in place now. These kids are hungry. They've bought in. They want to play good Texas football, and they're going to be fired up to play USC in the Coliseum in prime time.
Malik Jefferson had a sophomore year slump. I mean, here's what I've always said, is I just don't think, even if it's a shootout, I don't think there's any way that Shane Buechele and the Texas offense, losing their best player last year in Dante Foreman, will have the firepower to keep up with Sam Darnold in that offense. Look, all right.
Okay, fair enough.
Let's make a little on-air wager really quick. If Texas beats USC, Jeffrey and I will come into our show the following week decked out in Texas gear. We will post a photo to our social media pages, and we expect the same from you, decked out in Trojan gear the following week. Do we have a deal?
Very, 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 very fair. I accept that deal. And I want to give you guys one name on Texas to watch out for, because he's probably going to score at least 3 touchdowns against you guys. It's Colin Johnson. He's a 6'6" sophomore receiver out of San Jose, California.
My friend played him. He said
the charts gifted, and I really think the fact that, mistake me if I'm wrong, but I think you guys are going to be replacing quite a few defensive backs. That's going to be a big.
We're replacing one.
Up until this point in the season, USC is not going to have played a offense similar to what Texas has. A wide open attack. I mean, you don't really get that with Stanford. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
We're replacing one defensive back. I think it's interesting. Here's my prediction for that game really quick. Besides, I'm not going to predict the score or anything. I think the first offensive play that you guys run is you're throwing a deep ball to Colin Johnson. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Then if it does, the momentum is immediately sucked out of the building. But here we go, Robert. It's time for my favorite segment of the day. This is Jeffrey Dubroff's The Blitz. Robert, what I'm about to do with you is I'm going to ask you 10 questions. Some will have anything to do with football. Some will have to do with things like social life, food. You have 5 seconds or less to answer. So I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to prepare, and we'll get this thing going. All right. Robert, are you ready?
That was a quick 10 seconds.
Yeah, he doesn't get that much time. Best high school football moment?
Not getting a punt block in the Alamo Dome.
That's pretty cool. Tom Herman, buy or sell?
Wait, what?
Tom Herman, buy or sell?
Oh, big time buy.
Oh, shocker.
Whataburger or In-N-Out? I know the answer for this, but give me a reason why. I'm interested. Because, our answers are going to be the same.
Whataburger or In-N-Out?
Yeah.
I'm going to, obviously Whataburger, and my reason why is the consistency.
I love that. What is the worst sporting event of your fanhood career?
Texas versus Texas Tech 2008.
Really?
No, Kansas versus Texas 2016.
Mine was Spurs Heat 2013 Game 6. Childhood sports hero?
Garrett Johnson.
Backyard baseball or backyard football?
Backyard baseball. Pablo Sanchez.
I think that's been
the player of all time.
I think that's been the answer for every single person we've had.
one.
And they say the exact same thing. Heisman winner for the 2017 football season?
Sam Darnold.
Carmelo Anthony landing spot?
Probably Houston Rockets. Best move for the Spurs.
Yeah, I know. 2017 Texas football record?
Okay, I'm going to say 9-3.
Wow, that's lofty.
I can't wait to hear what you say.
Saying 7-5, but I'm going to throw in those 2 extra wins.
Hey,
faith in the Texas Longhorns.
Hey, if you're going to get airtime, at least make a big prediction. I like the strategy.
Yeah.
Finally, 2017 USC football record.
Ooh. I'm going to say 9-3.
Oh man,
God,
are you setting up a potential Texas USC?
I can't wait to have you on the show in September.
Alamo Bowl
I'm
record?
really looking forward to it.
Oh man,
I just think it's going to be interesting. You know, Darnold obviously coming off a new season with a lot of hype. It's just going to be really interesting to see how he responds starting off 1-2 out of the gate.
That's very fair. All right, we got a few minutes left. I think we're going to end with I got one more quick segment. It's USC football related. Let's get your opinion on it. No, we'll keep them on. Basically, there's a theory going around that if Pete Carroll...
By the way, hold on. My dad said, he just texted me, he said, that's it. Your co-host just sealed out the Horns win. The Nerf gods hate that.
Look, you guys, you can't forget what happened the last time these two teams got together. You can't quantify the fact that in the fourth quarter, even if y'all are up, probably going to be a little nervous on the sideline.
Not when Vince Young's not on the field. But let's let Garrett go ahead.
Yes, we only got a couple minutes left. Man, by the way, I cannot wait to have you on the show in September. But again, there's a theory that if Pete Carroll was still at USC, he would not be able to replicate the same success he had previously, and I'll tell you why. In the modern-day era of college football, USC now plays an extra Pac-12 game, a Pac-12 championship game, and an extra playoff game before they play in the national championship, or any team, rather. Even if you look at Alabama, who has been far and away the best program, right, in the last 5-10 years, they've only won one championship in the last 4 years, since the college football playoff has started. What's your take on that? Do you think it's harder to, given the makeup of the college football playoff, to have a dynasty in college football?
Oh, very much so. And, it really goes back to, I think, those 03, 04, 05 SC teams. I mean, they're great. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they're playing like 11 games in.
They're finishing with a record.
Right?
They're finishing a record at 13-0. If they go on to win a national championship and they run the table.
But I know I'm saying, like, back to those old teams. I mean, people always would complain about the amount of gap between, I guess it for y'all probably would have been the UCLA game to what would have, I guess, essentially been the BCS National Championship. But, a lot of people don't realize the amount of preparation that you can put forth to get ready to play that game. And, when you're playing in a playoff where if you win one, you've got to get ready in 2 weeks, it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot harder. It kind of opens it up to more of a March Madness type deal. And what that, you don't really see, it's kind of like college basketball, or the NFL even. You don't really see dynasties very often. It's really hard to consistently year after year come out and just win.
Right. College basketball. College basketball, it's really rare because if you want to say dynasty, you say Kentucky, maybe Duke, but again, both those teams only winning once in the last 5 years. North Carolina is the only one who's really done it more than once.
I think what's been so great about the college football playoff, really quickly before we sign off, is the fact that you're seeing this past year, Clemson was the 2 seed, they won. The year before that, Alabama was the 2 seed, they won. The year before that, it was Ohio State, right? They were the 4 seed, they won. I think what it does is it makes it a fair playing ground, but I think that's all we're going to have for today. Robert, thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on. If we can make the timing work, we're going to have you on in September. But that's all we have for you today. This has been In the Trenches on KXSC.org, 1560 AM. You can catch us here every Monday from 12 till 1. Only a couple more shows left on this summer scheduling, and then we'll have a new time slot. I have to imagine, I don't know when.
Sundays or Mondays.
We're hoping Sundays or Mondays because that's when our schedule works. But that's all we have. Have a fantastic Monday. I hope the work grind is not too hard. Everyone be safe. Fight on.
See you next time.